Hi, I'm Addison K. Witt, Poet Laureate of the Defense of Democracy and host of this podcast. The attack on America's public school system isn't slowing down, but neither are we. Here you'll meet authors, educators, students, and defenders from across the country who aren't just sounding the alarm, they're answering it. You'll be informed, you'll be moved, and if we've done our job right, you'll be ready to stand with us. This is the Defense of Democracy podcast. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Defense of Democracy. I'm your host, Addison K. Witt, who happens to be the Poet Laureate for Defense of Democracy. Today's podcast is a little bit different than my normal structure, and I want to begin by acknowledging and identifying this moment, not only as a political moment, but as a human one. Because across this country, people are tired. Divides don't just occur, they are orchestrated, encouraged. People like you and me are trying to hold our families together, work together, and maintain a sense of self together, while the ground beneath our government, our systems feels unstable, and in many respects it is unstable. And when systems become unstable, people feel it in their bodies first. There's confusion and it shows up as anger. Fear shows up as certainty, and silence often isn't apathy. It's a state of being overwhelmed. This episode here is to offer some clarity and hopefully a little bit of insight along the way. Since August of 2025, when I was asked to take the reins of this podcast, I've had the opportunity to sit down with educators and authors, youth leaders, artists, and advocates from across our country. And from those conversations, I've gained insight into our school systems, the rise of book bans, and the extraordinary work ordinary people are doing every day, often without recognition. These are the unsung heroes, people working inside their communities and within organizations across the nation. They're doing what they can, not only to preserve democracy as a framework of freedom for all, but to actively engage their neighbors in building a more, a more human and humane world. In my first episode with Karen Svoboda, who is the executive director of Defense of Democracy, I was handed this role as the host. And in that moment, I think it mattered to me because, like you, I don't want to stand on the sidelines of democracy. I too want to participate for you and for me. And we know it's easy to become cynical. It's easy to become dismissive, to believe that someone else will do what we all should be doing. But know this, we all have a responsibility to participate in the frameworks, in our systems, to do whatever part we can, whatever part we can play. This conversation it's not to uh, replace all the other conversations I've had, and this is not necessarily going to be the format, but I do want to take this moment to speak directly to you, to talk about the democratic norms that have been eradicated. We used to believe in a kind of certainty that democratic norms were grounded in the pursuit of equality, that rules existed to uphold the people. What we see now is something very different. Even bad certainty is being rewarded in a culture that no longer leaves room for complexity, and we both feel and see the cost of that loss all around us. Innocent human life is taken in the streets, in broad daylight, in crowded spaces. Journalists who are covering the outrage, standing up for democratic principles, are arrested in the middle of the night. Propaganda systems are quietly inserted into public and private schools. School boards become battlegrounds with parents fighting simply for their children to be seen, heard, and believed. None of this is theoretical. It is all happening as we speak. Even mayhem spilling over into the streets and becoming public theater. And I think it tells us something essential. When moral clarity erodes, policies follow, laws bend. When empathy is absent, procedure becomes a weapon. Remember when that was the word on the street that empathy didn't exist? It really doesn't matter. Well, a world without empathy is an endless descent into emotional fracture and societal chaos. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. As I've stepped into this role, there are certain truths that have become impossible to ignore. Most people are not uninformed. They are overwhelmed. Language is accelerating faster than understanding, and shame shuts people down faster than facts. And, silence. We talk a lot about silence. Silence is often fear disguised as indifference. And I've seen this echoed across classrooms, libraries, community meetings, and living rooms, and reinforced in conversations with people working on the ground every single day. One of my first conversations was with Dr. Charles Prince, chair of Defense of Democracy, and he told us that schools are no longer functioning as neutral spaces of learning, but as front lines where professional trust is being replaced by political interference and, in some cases, state sanctioned ideology. In my conversation with Dr. Ashley Hope Pettis, I loved talking to her. She has great energy, and it was a very fun conversation. We talked about what happens when students never see themselves reflected in the stories they're allowed to read, how absence shapes belonging long before it shapes grades. That's a really good conversation to go back to if you want to. Um, Ayan Moldalina, the high school student in Austin. Now, he reminded us that disengagement isn't apathy, it's often exhaustion, but it's a clear pattern. We see that democracy doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes when people feel powerless to participate, which brings me to this part that we simply cannot talk about democracy today without talking about the nervous system. If we are all connected, as we say, as we know that we are, we're all connected to this country, to each other. We know how it feels, how it moves, and there is your personal central nervous system. We have our personal central nervous system, and then there's one whole. And when we the people are scared, complexity feels like a threat. When people are flooded with distraction, dehumanization, manipulation, this has an exhaustive quality on the way we can collectively feel. And when institutions respond with deception, dishonesty, instead of care for the whole, well, they deepen the fracture. It's why yelling facts doesn't work. It's why public discourse feels brittle and even in some respects broken. This is why certainty, even when it's wrong, is rewarded and can give a certain amount of comfort. Understanding this does not excuse the harm taking place across the country every single day, but it does give us a way to interrupt it. Democracy does not fail all at once. It erodes when people no longer feel safe enough to think, or when courage has been siphoned out of the atmosphere. You've heard it said that voting doesn't matter. Here's the truth. That becomes true when people don't vote, or when they vote out of habit, or when they vote solely by party allegiance to satisfy the status quo. But when you vote conscientiously, your vote absolutely matters. You see, we the people were not an afterthought in this system. We were the final safeguard built into it. When one branch of government collapses into another, when accountability fails, when the levers of power are compromised, that is our activation signal. That is when the warning bell sounds. Danger, 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 Will Robinson. This is not the moment for blind loyalty. This is not the moment for political comfort. This is the moment to vote according to balance, not party. According to function, not fear, according to conscience, not convenience. You have the right to change your mind and see the world for what it can be, not chained to what has always been. Our system of governance, as flawed as it is, we know that it is, it still works best when there is a balance of power. Too much of one way for too long can become hostile to the people. And when a system enters free fall, the people must pull the correct lever, not to burn it down, but to restore balance so that oversight can occur, so that accountability can return, so that fractures can be addressed rather than ignored. This is not radical, and even if it feels radical to you, then be radical, because this is civic responsibility. You are the we, and we the people. Yes, there are those who want to see the house burned down. There always have been, but there are far more who believe the collective we can become a better us. This is why Defense of Democracy focuses on culture rather than spectacle. We support filmmakers, authors, educators, and artists because culture is where democratic values live or die. We create space for reflection. We preserve complexity. We elevate voices that help us remain human in moments designed to strip that away. This is not about shouting louder. It's about listening better. So, how do you participate? Not by knowing everything. God knows none of us do. Not by having the perfect words, but by staying present, by watching with curiosity instead of certainty, by insisting on conversations instead of arguments, by supporting those who are truth tellers, who actually care and build courage in others, not fear, by showing up, not just to protest, but to participate. Democracy survives when people remain conscious of what it means to be a human living on a shared planet. What I know is this: clarity is freedom. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to be flawless. You do not need discernment. And not everyone has it anyway. You do need agency. And many are still learning what that truly means. We hear that word a lot today, agency. To me, it means the willingness to choose consciously rather than live on autopilot. You do need the willingness to remain awake. That word, too, has been weaponized. But waking up is not a slogan, it's a necessity. There's a book I read years ago called Waking Up by Charles Tart. It speaks to a truth we often avoid. Human beings can drift into a kind of malaise, asleep while still moving through life. Staying awake intellectually, morally, emotionally is what allows us to be active participants in the lives we are living. So thank you for standing with me. Thank you for standing with Defense of Democracy. Thank you for standing up for what you believe in. And I tell you this, it's not over until it's over. So we will stand up, we will fight, we will resist, we will move forward, we will honor those in our country who stand up for each other and support each other so that we can build a better democracy moving forward for everyone. If you want to support Defense of Democracy, we'd love to have you. Please do, and I'll see you next time.
Defense of Democracy is the only national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting our schools and libraries from attacks by anti-government extremist organizations like Moms for Liberty. We count on listeners like you to support our work. If you would like to make a tax-deductible donation to Defense of Democracy, please visit defenseofdemocracy.org and click support. 100% of your contribution helps our work, including the production of this podcast. If you are a business and would like to learn about corporate sponsorships of the podcast, which start at $250 per month, please contact info@defenseofdemocracy.org.